Harry, Coach, thanks for doing this. Harry, how are you right now?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm hanging in there. Just you kind of burst onto the scene with this. What prompted all this?
Well, I guess being really sad first will put you in a bad sort of ways. But I would say I've had a history of mental health, and I guess everybody does in some respect. For me, I was in a bad spot mentally before the season last year, and in such a bad spot where it was essentially like, do this or do this. It's either not live anymore or say something, because if you don't, that's going to be it. And so when I was presented with that ultimatum, I came forward to Coach Day and was explaining everything that was going on. And Coach Day was very receptive. And so in the season, I sort of, in silence and in private, I was working through things, working with our sports psychologists here, seeing psychiatrists here, and just working on things. And ended up deciding months following that to medically retire and announce that publicly, so as not to, because I was seeing, and even over the course of during the season, I was seeing people raise questions or make speculations, which in a way is irritating in one respect, but also unfair to the truth to not be truthful when you could be otherwise. And so we talked about announcing it, and so I did, and that prompted a slew of things following that of speaking and sharing my story with people. And so I've sort of found myself in this spot where I've been able to share that, and I'm very grateful for it, especially seeing the responses that I received from people, seeing the current trend of what's going on with student athletes right now. It was sort of a funny twist of fate to think that every wrong step, what felt like a wrong step at the time, ended up being the perfect steps to get me to what I needed to say. And so now I'm here, and I've been very grateful to have created the relationships I have and experienced the things that I've experienced, that I can say the things that I have to say now.
When did you first realize something wasn't right with you?
That's actually a great question, because for a long time, I was sort of inundated with really bad thoughts, thoughts that would scare most people, thoughts that would hurt most people. And for me, that was just thinking. And I got to a point where I was like pretty fed up with it. And I realized how long I had been thinking this way. And for me, that was very normal. I figured everybody must think this way. This must be how it is. That proved not to be the case as I talked about it and received help about it. But I sort of came to a head before the season, and I think speak to most anybody. And there's a huge amount of stress prior to the season. There's a huge amount of stress surrounding competition, and I think that was one stressor paired with many other stressors, paired with many other experiences that I've had. That was sort of culminating in a tipping point, and so that's what prompted me to realize something is wrong here, something is happening here. And it's either say something or die, essentially. So that's what prompted me and made me realize that something was wrong and that I needed to say something.
The thoughts were dark. I mean, some of the things I read, it's scary.
Yeah, it was grade A sadness. It wasn't your typical everyday sadness. It was the good, top-notch, make you not want to be here anymore sadness. And I've been very grateful for it now. I was just reading the Aeneid this past week, and I'm halfway through it, and there was a line from it, and this was written thousands of years ago, and it said, "It is in my suffering that I've learned to help others who suffer," something like that. And I thought it was a beautiful line, and I just think it's how grateful I am that oftentimes sadness is not without fruit, is probably the most fruitful thing we experience, because it equips us so greatly to help others. And so that's why I'm grateful now to have experienced what I've experienced, because it's equipped me with the words and the understanding of the sentiments when people say I've felt that way too, to hopefully reach out to those people. And of course, I think what hurts me most is to see other student athletes it seems once a week we're having a student athlete commit suicide. And it's difficult because I've had so many people reach out to me and send me messages. I've had so many people introduce themselves to me on campus, and there's so many people telling me their names, telling me their stories, and it's so hard to remember so many names, and I wish I could remember 1,000,000 names. And I just wish I could talk to every single person and hear every person's story. But it's so hard, and I'm so limited, as we all are. And I think that's the reason, as people, we have a calling to be kind to our neighbors and talk to them, to the people we love, and then also to strangers. And we're in a very precarious situation, and it seems that there's something being lost in translation with student athletes and I guess the standard we think we're setting or the standard we're saying, but really what we're displaying. And it just seems that it's prompting a lot of student athletes, a lot of young people to think that there's no way out of it. And that's a sad sort of way to be in. And I just hope that by speaking more, that it can sort of put light on that and change what's being said.
Coach, Harry comes to you, and I know how you feel about your players. You recruit them here, they're football players, but they're like your kids. He came to you, what went through your head?
Well, I think first off, just when you look at what's happened here, first off, Harry had to do the work, and that was not easy. But to see what he's doing and the impact he's having at such a young age on so many people is tremendous. But I think the biggest part is that Harry had to do the work, and he had a lot of people here to help him, but there's a lot of people out there to help a lot of people. You know, he had to do the work, and now he's gotten to a place where he's looking to help others, and he's found that peace, and it's still an ongoing battle for all of us every day. And like he said before, you know, everyone has different levels of mental health, and we're all working through that. And so I give him all the credit. He's done it, and to think about the impact he's already made on the Columbus Society, Ohio, and then even nationally is tremendous.
But you had things in place here because this is something, mental health is important to you and your wife. You had something here that helped Harry.
We have great people here for sure, and but again, I go back to, you know, Harry has to do the work. I mean, you have to want to do the work in these scenarios, but we do. We have some really good doctors here, good psychiatrists in place, some counselors, sports psychologists in place for these type of things. But for a long time, you know, they were there, but they just didn't get the work. They didn't have, you know, people didn't want to do the work on themselves. And I think that's, to me, the magic of what's happened.
Brave, though, that he came and asked for help.
Well, that's it. Yeah, that's it. And I think that's where, when you look at a lot of these young people that we're losing, you know, they don't reach out in those moments. And so to try to say it's okay what you're feeling, that there is help out there, this is a great example of that. And so now, you know, Harry's almost repurposed his life to help people in that way, to say it's okay to ask for help in those moments. And I know people have come up to me and just told me unbelievable stories because of what Harry's done already, and I'm sure the same things happen to Harry. It's just they come out and they want to tell their story, they want to share it with everybody. And to me, that's more than half the battle, is just starting that initial conversation and say, I need some help here.
You know, it started with you. You guys have a bond. What does he mean to you?
Well, I recruited Harry, and you know, this started off when I was an assistant coach, and so it's just when you go through the recruiting process, you build relationships, and you know, you're on a journey together, and you never know where these things are going to go, and here we are, and this is a success story. To see where he's at right now, it's just tremendous, and I'm proud of him. What
does coach mean to you, Harry?
I'm very grateful. I remember when we met here with Candace and Dr. Norman, who's my psychiatrist. My mom drove up, and I know how easy it would have been for this not to have been the case. I've seen many days recently that I wasn't preparing to see. I had my 21st birthday, and my friends were there, and I wasn't expecting that months ago, but I was there for it, and so I'm very grateful. And that's just sort of, in retrospect, what breaks my heart most is I was speaking to somebody a week ago, and I just described it as the world's greatest salesman, and it feels like we're in this it's how do you outpitch the world's greatest salesman? And because I know how convincing those thoughts were to me, and many times the only thing that was between me being here and not being here was I said, like, I need to go to sleep, because if I stay up 30 more minutes and keep thinking I'm gonna do this, and it's a hard, really hard battle, and again, that's you see it with student athletes everywhere right now and people everywhere, and I'm just grateful that in my case there were people here who wanted to help, because that's not the case everywhere, and even where that is the case, it doesn't work out sometimes.
You know, you think about athletes, and we're taught, it's a stereotype, you got to be tough, you got to suck it up. Was there any of that with you keeping it in?
I don't think that was said to me, but it's inescapable, which is sort of bewildering to me, because again, I keep reading. I love to read, and you read about great protagonists. And for example, I'm a guy, so I really look up to great male protagonists. And so, say Tom Joad from Grapes of Wrath, or Aeneas from the Aeneid, which I'm reading right now. And some of the best men in history or literature or wherever are some of the most compassionate and kindest men, and display massive emotional intellect. And I don't know. It's strange that we've found ourselves in a position to admire sequestered emotions. And I forget where I heard it, but I described somebody talking about manliness or toughness as a strong hand with a gentle touch, and I think it's strange that we've found ourselves in a weird place where we're grandizing these very non-manly parts of manliness, which of course are great to have many times if you want to lift something heavy, or if you want to scream very loudly. But that's not the kind of person I want to hold my child per se, or to reach out to me when my mother is sick, or to be my friend. I want somebody who is kind and compassionate and sincere. And I think those are the best qualities of men and of people in general. I just think if we could appreciate that, which are oftentimes very hidden, very humble aspects of people, if we praise those things instead of these stats or things that seem so unachievable or things that seem so easy to lose, it would ground ourselves in something that felt much safer and much easier to keep on the day-to-day. And that's what I've tried to display for my friends in the locker room. And we've got a great locker room of guys who are fantastic. And those are guys that I would, when my mother is sick, they call to me and ask how I'm doing. And you know, there will be guys in there who will be at my wedding and be a godfather of my children. And those are special guys, and they're everywhere. And I think those are the best qualities of toughness or of being a man, is being kind when everything suggests you shouldn't be. So,
hearing you say that, and I'm sure there was a time the future was uncertain to you. Are you excited about the future now?
Yeah, I remember I was driving home one day, I think like in January or February, and I texted or called Coach Day, and I was like, you know, this is the first afternoon where I'm excited for tomorrow. And I tangibly noticed it, because for so long I had been aware of the opposite. And so yeah, I'm very excited, and I feel like I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to do, in which case there is no fear of being an imposter, there is no fear of failing, because it's what I'm supposed to be doing. And so I'm very, very excited for tomorrow and the days that follow that.
Coach, he's still part of the team. He's not playing. His role now with the club.
Well, I think I just go back to Harry's done the work, but he doesn't owe it to anybody to tell a story. This is his story. And a lot of those things are private to him, that he's really gone out there, and that's courage. And that's the kind of people you want in your building every day. And that's a guy that is, we started the recruiting process with, and he's going to be here until he graduates, because first off, the guys in that locker room care a lot about him. And again, I just go back to when you look at what he's done and the courage, he doesn't have to tell the story. He doesn't have to put this all out there, but he's doing it. Why? To help other people. And that makes our locker room stronger. And so, there's guys who have turned to him. I mean, I've had 2 guys in my office who have said, you mind if I give Harry a call and talk about this? They go to him for counsel because they see the strength in that. So that's just, that makes our team better.
You didn't choose this, Harry, but it happened. And I commend you for your missionary work, and you're a caring giant. Is this now your mission?
Yeah, I think in many respects it is, and you're talking about how I don't have to share it, and that's sort of what I said weeks ago, is that nobody has to say anything, and that's precisely why somebody has to say something, because we can continue to not say anything, just as we have been doing for a long time, and we can continue to have young people die if that's what we want to happen. And sometimes it is difficult for me because, to talk about these wounds, sometimes I have to reopen them, which is a painful process. But regardless, the wounds are there. And so let them be useful, I think. I'm grateful to have found myself in this position. And it's terribly funny how, and I think everybody can feel this sort of sentiment where for spells of lengths of time in our lives, we think like this is not how things should be going. Like I've got a plan, and this is going in the wrong direction. And then in all of the wrong directions, and I think of something that Coach Parker says, where he says, 1 left doesn't make a right, but 3 lefts do. And I think in all of our wrong turns and all of the things that we think is something wrong that's happening to us, we end up exactly where we're supposed to be. And that's how I feel now in this weird sort of jumble of things, and I've come out on this other side. And so, yeah, I would say so. While you're here, you better make yourself useful. And so that's sort of my MO, and I've been able to find that in Nicaragua, and I've been able to find that here and speaking to people. So it's turned out, I'm grateful for how it's turned out.
Coach, I see the affection you both have for each other. You recruited this kid. And yeah, he's a football player, but you're a dad. These are like your kids, aren't they?
Well, it's watching him go through this process is, it's amazing, but it's also, it's emotional. It is. And I'm just proud of him. I keep saying that, but it's true, because, there's a lot of people that are going through this right now that have not done what Harry's done. And there's a reason why. It's because it's hard. But I think the more people that we see do this, then hopefully the more people come out and see that it is possible. And I think, I don't know, I don't want to speak for you, Harry, but there's a little bit of a fear of what people might say. But when you did say it, I think the response was pretty strong, right, and support.
Yeah, super strong. If I was myself, however many months ago, watching this, and I was waiting for somebody to say something that convinced me to want to say something myself, what would I want that person to say? And I remember in the very desperate moment thinking, like, there's nobody to turn to, like, this is it. I've spent 20 years living this way. People think of me as a college football player. You feel sort of trapped by your destiny and your expectations, and I think that's very true. Especially for student athletes, where I remember, sometimes thinking like, oh, I can't commit suicide today. I've got a final next week, and I got a game on Tuesday. I can't commit suicide now. I've got things I got to do. And I say that sort of facetiously, but I think that's a reality for student athletes, where many times it doesn't stop. It's hyper stressful, and I think the tragedy and sort of like the comedy of errors of it all, and I think a lot of young men and women feel in this sphere, is that it is a game, and we play it like a game. But if you make a mistake, you receive death threats, or people make it a game of life and death. And you say, okay, it's a game of life and death then. And then when it gets to that level and you carry the weight of life and death on you daily in your games or in your grades, and you want to reach help for it, and people say like, it's just a game. Well, it's not just a game anymore. It was made not a game a long time ago. It was made a game of life and death. And I think that's where student athletes become so confused, is because they think like, when did this become what it is right now? And it's terribly isolating. It's terribly alienating. And I remember that's how I felt. You know, I mean, like, it's like, I don't want to be here anymore, and I've got to be in front of 100,000 people next weekend. How is that supposed to work? And I think that could drive anybody crazy. And so what I would say to, and of course that extends to somebody working a job in a small office where they think people are expecting me at work on Monday. And that's a scary feeling for somebody who doesn't want to be here anymore. And I would say to those people that all these things that you think you're locked into and all these relationships that you think are so conditional, I was so graciously surprised by how the people who loved me still, regardless. And all the things that I thought were a game of life and death were so trivial, and in the presence of people who care about you did not matter at all. That would be my advice to all these people who feel this way, don't know what to say, don't know how to get out of it, is that if you just speak with the people who care about you, you'd be surprised how much grace people would offer you. And I think, and it's so tragic that we're losing people this often because we're just one loving word too late. And so that would be my advice to anybody experiencing that. Would be my advice to somebody who's got a friend that they might suspect, or maybe even not. But there's never a kind word that is too early. It's always perfect to be kind, to say something right and true and just and fair and loving. And that's something I've learned, and because I realized how desperate my time was when I was desperate. And so I've been trying to practice that more and more.
You got a lot to live for, young man.
Mm-hmm.
You really do.
And this is something that I had said before, but I'd received a lot of cognitive behavioral therapy. You can read any book, you can get any evidence, you can be read up on any science about depression. I read so many books from so many different philosophies or beliefs, and you can score 100 on the test of life and still be completely depressed. And that's when I realized, and I said this weeks ago, but I really believe that hope is just pretending to believe in something until one day you don't have to pretend. And there are so many times where I thought this whole thing of life and happiness was a lie, that I was being force-fed a lie. And I was like, I want out of this. And in those moments, I convinced myself, I said, it doesn't make sense right now, but just pretend you believe in it, give yourself some time, and then of course eventually here I am. And imagine if I hadn't done that. And again, like I said, it's the world's greatest salesman, and if you let him keep talking, the talk gets really convincing, and that's when people make these big decisions. And like I said, it's just these little acts of preservation of sometimes I went to sleep, but you just gotta put tape on the mouth of this guy and stop listening to him, which is so hard. Because for me, like, what's difficult is every good piece of advice I would read, I think for anybody, depression outthinks that and makes it a non-factor. And it's like, yeah, that was cool, but I don't really care. Anything you give it, it's like I don't know what's the Terminator from Terminator 2. I think it's like the T-1000. But it's like it's shape-shifting, and it can become anything it needs to be to achieve its goals. I think that's what makes it so difficult. I remember talking with Candace, and I described it as, somebody has got a gun and they want to kill you, but if you kill that person, you'll die as well. And so the only way to get out of this alive is to love the person who has the gun so convincingly that they don't want to kill you anymore. And that's where the work is, because I think we're thrown into this world with our trauma, and everybody keeps it quiet, and we never address it, and we never learn how to love each other. We never learn how to love ourselves, and it culminates into this tragic decision. And I think that's where the majority of the work is is I came up with like a life motto of mine a few years ago where I said, I just want to love others easier and make myself easier to be loved. And I figured that would cover, there was nothing outside of those bounds. And if I could just do those two things, then everything would be just as they're supposed to be. But my advice would be, it's just endure, it's keep holding on. And like I said, I've got a necklace that says it, and I've quoted a lot, Dum Spiro Spero, while I breathe I hope. And hope is just pretending to believe in something until one day you don't have to pretend anymore.
You have to try to create an environment where it's okay to take mental health seriously. And, you know, again, when you explain it like this, I think it makes sense to young men. If you sprain your ankle and you don't get it fixed, what's going to happen? It's going to get worse. If you put some tape on it and you get it fixed, it heals. Well, we don't think of mental health that way. If someone tears their ACL, they're going to need some time. They might need surgery. They might need medication. They may need these types of things. And so even when it's going well, you still, I mean, physically, we talk about ourselves. We take pictures of ourselves on Instagram. We do all those things, but what about the mental part of things? And so I think the best we can do is just try to create an environment where that's okay, and to know that if you need help, it's okay to ask for help, and try to put the resources in place, knowing that a big part of it is just asking the questions, and just continually trying to create as much trust as you possibly can, that when something does come up, that they can come to you, or we can identify something that may be going on to try to help them.